So, Stephen, I love to have my guests, give me a bit of a helping hand on the podcast and answer a question from a listener. Would you be willing to do that today for us?
You bet.
Oh, yay. So, we've had a question, which I'd love to just get your initial thoughts on for this person. And I love this question so much. I love the way it was written, and I think many people can relate to it. They say, I often feel like I'm simply not good enough. Good enough compared to what, you may ask? Good enough compared to not only others, but who I think I could be. Others seem to take life in their stride, whereas I get the sense that I have the brakes on in some way. I know this is a lot of my perception, particularly in a low state of mind, but even though I do see it's not a permanent state, it's so persistent and frequent that it may as well be. What can I do to release the brakes and live more fully and be more of who I am meant to be? And this is a bit I love as well. As I write this, I'm not even sure it makes sense, because what does live more fully mean, or who I am meant to be mean? But it's more of a sense of feeling I'm being held back. I hope you can understand my question. And before I turn it over to you, Stephen, I just want to say that I could have written that myself. It's probably something similar in my own journal from whenever ago. So yeah, definitely hear you there. What would you like to share with this person?
Well, that's a beautiful question, actually. And it's, it can get a little jumbled up, right? It's often the case that the most poignant questions and the questions that have the potential to be, most impactful are the most challenging to articulate, right? So I'll certainly share what I'm hearing, and hopefully it is somewhere near where the listener, her or his intended inquiry was headed. It sounds to me like the ever so common situation of being out of the flow state of life, and seeing others that seem to be riding the current so much more easily than we do, and that somehow we're stuck, hence the breakage, the releasing of the brake. How do we get that out of there? And as we've talked about, there are many techniques, and some of them are extremely useful for dropping into the flow, for calming down the central nervous system. And I would, again, encourage people to utilize those as much as they see benefit from them. But again, there's more fundamental value from my perspective in the understanding of the flow of life instead of how to get into it, because how to get into the flow of life is really tricky. It boils down to an allowing, truly, and you can't really do allowing. But but if we think about this, so what might it mean to how I see it, at least in the moment, is if life is a river and it's flowing, it's always flowing. It's always flowing, and you and I, and we're all part of that river. So although it seems as though we've gotten stuck, we really can't be. It's not possible. But if we were to say that we got off into a little eddy off to the side of the river, and it's swirling around because our thoughts are swirling and the feelings are swirling, so we're in this little whirlpool, and it feels like we are so disconnected from the flow of life, but in reality we're right there, we're right next to the river all the time. And being stuck is we can be physically stuck. I was stuck in traffic this morning, and then I realized, oh, fuck, I am the traffic. That doesn't even make sense, right? But we can be, the guy from 127 Hours, that movie where his arm got stuck in the boulders and he had to cut it off that dude was stuck, truly, right? So if that happens, like, don't call me if you have a cell phone, call 911. Don't, that's not the kind of stuckness that I play with. But outside of the physical realm, mentally, emotional, spiritually, we really can never be stuck, but for our thoughts. We're never stuck. And so how do we remember? So it's an issue of remembering. How do we create a space where we are more likely and can more easily remember that we are the river and that we're always in flow. And again, so it comes back to, I only really say like 3 things, if you haven't noticed, it all, it all comes back to curiosity. And so when we find ourselves out of flow, when we sense that we're outside of that, how do we sit with that? And what do we know? We know it can't really be the case. And when this listener said, I know, I forget what they said. I know this, but it's not permanent. Well, it's okay to just not really know yet. I mean, if we know something intellectually, but it simply means we don't fully know it yet. And it's totally okay not to know it yet. And so it would go back to, again, the 3 steps. When we're feeling outside of the flow of life, we go back to those 3 steps. And I mean, how liberating it can be to come to really see that it's impossible for us to ever make a mistake. And we'll fall for it. We'll fall back into that outside in misunderstanding. We all do. I mean, I do daily, hourly. We fall in and out of it all the time, but we come back home. And it's that awesome feeling when you've come back home again after being gone for a while. It's nice to be back home.
Oh, Stephen, I really love that answer. Thank you so much for sharing that.